Hello and welcome back to another episode of Nick Tiffany's Movie Reviews, coming at you online and in print format at nicktiffany.com, in podcast form, wherever you get your podcasts, and even on YouTube and all those fun social media networks. Today, we're still hot off of the release of Sinners. Only seen it twice, which is a little bit of a bummer for me. I probably should have seen it at least 4 more times by now. But the movie is a huge success. Word of mouth has been massive for the film. It's got one of the biggest openings for an R-rated film post 2020. For a horror film, it is just crushing different records. I think it is just hitting with so many different audiences so well. I think the best thing about going a second time was just like knowing certain moments were coming, kind of watching how the audience was going to respond to certain things. It was great, super responsive audience. You can't ask for more than that, especially with a film as affecting and as fun as that one can be. But this week, it does bring its own new look and feel to it. We've got The Accountant 2, long awaited sequel to the 2016 kind of sleeper hit, The Accountant. I remember it was probably like a discount movie Tuesday. I went with a couple friends of mine, had no clue what the movie was. We'd seen Triple Nine or whatever that one bank heist movie was sometime previously, and we're like, all right, Accountant 2, or The Accountant. Love Ben Affleck. We'll give it a go. Ended up being far more interesting, far more layered, great bursts of action. Obviously, The Accountant, Ben Affleck's character, has this tick, slightly autistic. He's somewhere on the spectrum, and so there's this interesting look at how his life was kind of curated for him, how he became who he was with this set of skills and this knowledge. Really fascinating in a lot of ways. J.K. Simmons is great, but just tons of awesome moments. Really felt like it came out of nowhere, though. Gavin O'Connor's the director. You might know him from Warrior, which is a phenomenal movie. And recently he also did another film with Ben Affleck, The Way Back, as a basketball coach. That was a fantastic movie. I thought great performance from Ben Affleck, too. So The Accountant 2, not to get deep into spoilers, but it's in the marketing, it's in everything. Ben Affleck's got a brother, John Bernthal, who is his own version of some Black Ops badass for hire. Anytime you need a job done, you call one of these two guys, likely. So he's trying to bring his brother in to unravel this huge mystery. Again, without getting too deep into anything that would spoil anything from the first film either. These two brothers have not seen each other for a while, and in the first film, it's kind of played more emotionally in terms of how they realize sort of the work that they both do, how much they've missed each other, looking at how hardened and lonely and isolated their lives are as a result of kind of how they grew up, and kind of forcing them almost in a good way to be a little more bonded there. So this film, coming off of that, there's definitely some time between when the first film and the second film take place, and it's clear that the brothers really haven't kept in touch, unfortunately. But a lot of this film's tone was a lot funnier than I thought it would be. And it plays off of some of those ticks that Ben Affleck really kind of doubles down on here. I would say that as far as where the first performance in the first film was on the spectrum, there were little ticks, there were little moments where you could tell, like, okay, maybe his mind works a little bit differently. He's very intelligent, a little socially awkward. It doesn't quite know how to always converse with people. It doesn't have some of that awareness, perhaps, as far as what he's saying versus how it might be received. And in this film, they definitely play it up for laughs in some ways. Certainly, his intelligence is highlighted. His quirks, his ability to decipher things, very funny, very fun, but you also do get a dose of how people in the real world might respond. I say the real world. People in the world might respond to some of those nuances or those quirks. And a lot of it's played up for laughs, especially between the two brothers. There's definitely the teasing that obviously I think comes with having a sibling, but I think John Bernthal really gets a kick out of just teasing Ben Affleck, and they do, to their credit. I mean, they have a very brotherly bond in the movie in that sense where they can be very distant, they can be tough with their words, they can be emotionless at times, but underneath all of that, they do have a pretty deep care for one another, and it's fun to see how that sort of is elicited throughout the film, whether they're country western dancing or just mowing down armies of bad guys. The story, a little less interesting perhaps than the first film. I think the first film certainly benefited from having a little bit more mystery, having Anna Kendrick in there as the, innocent but kind of on the trail of something. I think it was missing a little bit in that regards. I think it still told a pretty powerful story towards the end. And I think certainly the effect that you see in John Bernthal's character throughout the film, it was a really nice touch. I think they've already greenlit a third film for this series. They're in talks, I believe, to maybe bring Anna Kendrick back in the future. But Accountant 2, it was a blast. It was a ton of fun. Not, I think it's tough coming off of Sinners because it's fun. I don't think it's as good as the original per se. Just full execution, full everything. I think the comedy bits were fun. But there were more than a few stretches where I was like, is this what we're doing? We're doing a comedy now? I mean, it's okay, but some of that lack of seriousness maybe took me out a little bit more in ways where I was wanting to be a bit more engaged with the story they were telling, because it kind of gets to a point where, yeah, I'm not going to liken it too much to Sicario, but when you're talking about gangs or cartels and you're talking about some of the horrible things that really do happen in real life to innocent people, there's an aspect of that, not that it's not respected, but if they would have focused a little bit more on that, I think part of how they delivered the ending and where they want to go with the story might have landed a bit better. Still a blast though. Ben Affleck's great. John Bernthal is terrific. Like I said, the two of them together are tons of fun. And there is sort of a mystery here again. I don't think it quite lands like the first films, kind of unravels, but still a great time at the movies. I'm glad it's not eating up too many of the IMAX theaters for Sinners. I know Thunderbolts comes out next week, so they're going to lose some of those. But I missed out on seeing Sinners in the Dolby format because The Accountant 2 has taken over that. So this is that movie game, man. But just go see movies, keep them in theaters, because this is it's a good problem to have. It's a good, bad problem to have. The second biggest release this week, at least in my opinion, comes in the form of a Netflix original film directed by Gareth Evans. And if you don't know that name, you are missing out on two of the greatest action films. And like almost anyone who's ever played video games, for anybody who's read comic books or manga, anyone who has watched absurdist action and comedy and violence. There is something in Gareth Evans' filmmaking. So he did The Raid Redemption, and then he filmed the movie called The Raid 2. Both of these movies, the first one in particular, it's almost like a video game. You've got to get to the top level, and every level that this guy's going up subsequently just gets harder and harder. Bad guys get better armor, they get better weapons, you're taking on more people. And of course, just like in a video game, it's going to be more difficult when you get to the top. And with a premise like that, logic, so many things, you throw them out of the window because Gareth Evans, it just highlights everything from, I don't even want to say martial artistry to jujitsu to kung fu, like every form of fighting combat that you could possibly imagine, that you probably have ever seen, is on display in his movies. They are brutal and ruthless in terms of some of the kills and some of the, the bloodiness of what happens. They will leave you breathless, like kind of like a video game when you've got hordes of people that you're fighting. There's just moments that seem to go on for so long, and you're like, we're like 5 to 7 minutes into the same action sequence, and it's relentless, and we're still going. And your jaw's just hanging like, what am I watching? And there is this feeling like you're playing a video game where you're like, these waves just don't stop. How much health does this guy have? Like, oh my God, how many more creative ways can you kill somebody? And they just find new ways. And the Raid 2, they kind of leave that setup of, ascending towers. You're out and about. You've got multiple crime factions kind of all looking for the same guy. You've got a dude with a baseball bat who's just trying to kill everybody. There's so many unique weapons and characters that are defined to those weapons. It is just masterful filmmaking, unlimited entertainment, absolutely berserkers and nuts. His movies are just awesome. So he made a film, Havoc, with Tom Hardy. The movie is like 90 minutes, guys. I was a little shocked when I saw that, just because I was like, hey, well, that's, easy knockout. I know what I'm watching tonight kind of thing. But there was a part of me that was like, okay, maybe the story is not going to be the focus. Much like in the other films, the story is not necessarily what drives everything. There's violence, there is something at the core that drives all this death. And that's really what we're kind of like zeroing in on here. And with Havoc, that was largely the case. Timothy Olyphant's in the film. You've got more than a few people who pop up. I want to say Luis Guzman was in there, Forrest Whitaker. Story, fine. Very fine. Classic action B-movie setup for double crosses. Some big boss is coming in out of town because their kid was killed. they're going to go on a rampage, and this kind of corrupt cop who's under the thumb of the mayor is the only guy who can kind of save the day. You know, it's something we've seen before, though how it is presented here in so many ways, not so much. There's probably 20 minutes of, story, plot, setup, dialogue, stuff like that. That's kind of like littered throughout, more at the beginning, somewhat in the middle. And it's important enough that, we need to know what's going on. We know who the players are. Because we hit bursts of what feel like 10-minute action sequences in this film, where, again, much like in the Raid 2, is just relentless. If I had a name for this movie, it would actually be called Unlimited Magazine, Unlimited Ammo, something of the like. I don't think I saw a single person reload a gun that was not a revolver. And I say that in the best way, though, because you could go into a movie like this and nitpick and be like, it was really unrealistic that his machine gun pistol had 90 rounds of ammunition. Because you're right, it would be. But after the first 30 or 60 rounds are sprayed, you kind of know what you're in for. And so you're just like, are they going to get a shot off before he gets another 30 up and around the corner here? It's ridiculous. It's entertaining. Like I said, it's relentless. It just doesn't stop. I probably looked over at my dad a couple times and we're like, this is still going. This is like nuts. And people are still, we're going to unload one clip on one dude. It's just nuts. The story, fine. Again, for 90 minutes, you really can't go wrong with something like this. Tom Hardy, he's got that funky, interesting voice of his going on here. And he's fine. He's good. There's an aspect of me, I'm waiting for him maybe to jump back into, I want to say some more serious filmmaking, but his recent string of projects has been very interesting. He's doing TV, a lot of Netflix and streaming projects. Just curious to see him maybe get back with Christopher Nolan or something. Just try to bring something a little more theatrical out of him. I don't know. I think he's been dormant for a little while. But for what it was, Havoc was a blast. Mindless, shoot 'em up, just over the top, badass, tons of fun. Really can't go wrong. If you got Netflix, you've got no excuse. The big third film that I checked out this week, I don't know if you want to call it big, Neighborhood Watch. And at first I was like, I've seen that movie with Jonah Hill and Ben Stiller and Richard Haydn and those guys. No, we're not talking about that film. This is Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Jack Quaid, and Malin Ackerman. And this is probably the third or fourth Jack Quaid film I've seen this year and reviewed. It just happens to be. It's one of those things. Sometimes actors, when you shoot a movie, when it gets released, it all lines up perfectly. Obviously, he's been doing great with The Boys, but really, in the last year, you've probably seen him in 7 or 8 films. So it's just hitting at the right time. Jack Quaid is a young, mentally ill man who's just recently got out of a stint in the hospital. He's somewhat schizophrenic. He's on new medication, trying to get a job. Sister Malin Ackerman's character, she's trying to keep the lights on. She needs him to get jobs so she can help make all the payments. He sees a woman being beaten and thrown into the back of a car and goes to report it to the police. They know that he was in the bin for a little while. They're like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll look it up. Nothing's really going to happen. So he goes to his neighbor across, right next to him. Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, who was no longer a campus security guard. And it's like, hey, the cops aren't going to do anything. I need someone to go look with me. This guy's super crotchety, wants nothing to do. He's like, no, you're the loony kid next door. Stay away from me, yada, yada, yada. But eventually, he's kind of won over by, why do you care about this girl anyways? It's like, it's just the right thing to do. And if no one's going to do it, then I will go do it myself. But I don't know where to begin. And I just need a little help. Unwittingly, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character agrees to help him out. They start looking for this missing girl. You kind of get these bursts of Jack Quaid's mental illness kind of coming out, or moments where, in some situations people might stay quiet, but he's going to yell. He might smash things, break things, but he's fueled by this passion and this sadness and this anger of nobody's doing anything to help this girl. Nobody wants to be helpful enough. They don't want to believe me. Whatever it might be that's going to lead to her dying. And I can see how on paper this could be an interesting premise. 30 minutes into this thing, I was just kind of losing interest. I was having some lunch, eating outside. I had it all set up, and I just found myself drifting, waiting for either something unique or different to happen, something bold. I don't know. It just felt like in some ways they kind of played the film safe. The story, I guess, evolved as you imagined that it would. There weren't necessarily any surprises that came with it. And in some ways, there's some classic movie tropes that they'll throw in there with, cops trying to, the cop didn't believe him at first, but, now this kid might be onto something. But there's this reluctancy to, hey, we're the cops. We can't own up that we didn't do our jobs and that this kid might be smarter than us. Or, I don't know. It was fine. It was very fine. I look and it's like crime thriller. Yes, there's crime. Thriller, not so much. I don't know. There's a couple moments that are maybe semi-thrilling, but Neighborhood Watch just didn't have the juice, unfortunately. There was nothing really in the tank there that was like, let me go tell some people about that. Like, that was pretty interesting. Or this is a unique take on, a story of a missing girl and nobody wants to find her. And, maybe she's a street girl, so of course it's going to be harder. For what they could have done differently with it, I was very underwhelmed, unfortunately. So, Neighborhood Watch, if you need something, if you like both those actors, it's not a bad reason to check it out, but it just wasn't quite what I was hoping for. Now, I have yet to, as of recording this, go see Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, in theaters. God, it's the 20th anniversary of that, which is kind of nuts. But I've got my tickets. I'm very, very excited to go. I went and saw The Phantom Menace in theaters, which was pretty fun. Truthfully, they didn't do Attack of the Clones, weirdly enough, which kind of is just leaving money on the table there for Disney. Not that they need it, but I think it would have set up perfectly because within a year, if you're going to drop Episode 3 in theaters, you might as well have done Episode 2. People love Grievous. People love aspects of Attack of the Clones. They want to see Jango Fett get decapitated. But that's why we're going to see Episode 3, so we can see Count Dooku get decapitated. And so I'm very excited. I mean, the movie's on track to make at least $20 million, which I've kept reading different articles. This might be the highest grossing opening weekend for a re-released film in theaters ever, which is just nuts because you think about Dune and you think about Tenet, Interstellar, these movies that made millions after reopening again in theaters, probably doing their IMAX re-releases and whatnot. And this is just standard screens. There's no Dolby, there's no IMAX. But at my local theater, there's like 9 screenings of Star Wars Episode 3 a day. So, kind of cool. I'm sure you've seen videos of people dressed up with their lightsabers screenings. I saw that Hayden Christensen and Samuel L. Jackson emceed a screening somewhere they popped in to do a little intro. So, that's pretty cool. I'm very curious to see how this stands up 20 years later. Because obviously I was a child when this movie, I was 10 when this movie came out, pretty much. So to see it with a fresh set of eyes in the theatrical setting, though, is going to be really cool. Which is a great segue into the fact that Star Wars is back on your small screen. Disney Plus, Andor, Season 2, the first 3 episodes are out. They're doing 12 episodes this season, 12 episodes this season, and they're releasing them in 3-episode chunks, essentially. And writer Tony Gilroy, who's the creator of the series, kind of talked about that, and it was similar in the first film where 2 to 3 episodes felt like they were sort of telling their own self-contained story within an overall larger story. And you get different character beats, you get different moments that will be influential throughout the season and kind of help inform likely what happens at the end. The writing just continues to be incredible. I'm not going to go too deep into what's happening. For those of you who haven't seen season 1, watch it. This is mature Star Wars. This is a look at how the Galactic Empire can oppress an entire galaxy systematically, one planet at a time. There's so many people, and I just see so many arguments and stupid things online. And it's like, Star Wars is a kid's show. Star Wars is for kids. Yes, and you look at what George Lucas is talking about in every movie, and politics are just sewn into Star Wars on every molecular level, almost, especially when we're talking about Episode 3 and trade federations and stuff. Like, the first 3 films are completely political. And the world of Star Wars has always been influenced by the Nazis. By the Galactic. It's lost on me how much people don't connect with real life and fantasy, or how much is informed by real life. And so I get that people want escapism in their content. I don't even want to call it content. I get that people want escapism. That's why you go to the movies. That's why you watch TV. You want to live some peaceful life that's not yours for 30 minutes to an hour. And that's fine. And Star Wars has so much of that content out there that it's not even funny. Even their semi-mature content ends up being mostly pushed for kids, which obviously sucks for those of us who can handle a little bit of maturity in our Star Wars content. But I'll just leave you with this: one of the biggest controversies from the first 3 episodes of Andor in the Star Wars world is there is a galactic. I forget what position this guy is, but you've got some of our rebels who are on the run, who are illegal, where they're at, moving system to system, trying to find work where they can, avoiding the Empire. And you've got a young woman who is illegal, and this slimy commander guy is, I could throw you into jail, or, we could work something out, and I'd hate to be the bad guy, and, essentially attempts to rape her and tries to, assault her. Doesn't get that far with it before she kind of hits him back. I guess spoiler there, doesn't happen. She hits him back. But you have this moment where online people are up in arms. They're like, I can't believe Star Wars would even say the word rape. I can't even believe that they would show something like this. This does not belong in Star Wars. This is a kid's series. This is just, why would the Empire even do something like that? And that's where my mind kind of gets blown, where it's like, what do you think this is based on? Like historical accounts of, people abusing their power in war and in wartime, or their positions of power, whether it's deporting people. And it's crazy how much is lost on people. And for me, I'm like, yeah, it was another powerful moment that really, again, shows how duplicitous and just how evil the Empire is, how uncaring, how disposable people are in their views, and how they talk about trying to frame the situation so they can get rid of an entire race of people easier. I mean, it's hardcore. It's not always going to be comfortable, but watching this, it really influences how the world of Star Wars could exist as we know it, as we know how the Empire took over, as we knew how galaxies and systems and people are being killed and oppressed and thrown into jail on, bogus crimes and kept in a prison cycle. They're just, man, this is the greatest thing that's come out of Star Wars TV-wise, absolutely. And Tony Gilroy, Rogue One, all of this leads to Rogue One. And Rogue One is still the only great movie that Star Wars, I'm not going to say the only great movie that they've done since the originals, but it is easily the best film that they have released from 1, 2, and 3, 7, 8, 9, the Han Solo movie, whatever. I'm like, Rogue One is incredible. It's a film that matters. This is a show that matters. Absolutely check it out. And lastly, speaking of shows that matter, the studio. Studio continues to be great, continues to have funny, educational, topical discussions about the importance of film, creation, about art, all the different meanings of art, how it shows up. The last episode, so great. Rebecca Hall shows up for 30 minutes, and Seth Rogen is essentially just pitching why film is art, why it exists, why it matters, why it's important, comparing film to doctors' work, comparing it to other things. It is just a great episode for anybody who's passionate about something that sometimes maybe you have doubts about. Does this matter? Am I really doing something like what a doctor is doing? Am I saving lives? Am I helping the economy? What am I contributing? And when you're heavily involved in something that is artistic, could be theater, it could be movies, it could be painting, it could be whatever. You could be a carpenter. Whatever you're doing, art exists in so many worlds, and we need to recognize that. And we need to look at it like this and have these discussions. And it's a hill that Seth Rogen's character is willing to die on. The episode is hilarious. It is awesome. Apple TV Plus, you got to check out the studio. It's not just for film lovers. I think audiences are going to connect with it otherwise. So that about sums up our last week in film. We got the official Seattle International Film Festival booklet. We got all the movies that are coming out, so I'm going to be putting together my not so little list of the 20 to 40 films that I'm going to try to watch during the festival, kind of giving you a breakdown. We'll do our capsule reviews, as always, online on the website, and then I'll kind of do some filmed and audio version, just kind of like this. We'll do rapid fire going through them in chunks. We'll definitely chunk that up so it's not 20 at a time, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff that I'm very excited for at this festival. The press launch party was great. I saw more than a few trailers for things I'd never heard of that are now just completely piquing my interest, and I'm so excited to get to. So we'll be doing coverage throughout the whole festival, in person, online, at the galas, opening and closing night ceremonies. You name it, we'll be doing it. So really looking forward to that. Thunderbolts is next week. Everything that I've heard so far about Marvel's latest, my fingers are crossed. I'm hoping this isn't like a Thor, Love and Thunder, Guardians 3, which was fine. I don't know. It's so hard to get excited for Marvel movies these days, especially when you see people you know and trust saying like, hey, this is actually pretty good. You want to believe, but you're hesitant. I've been happy with the amount of behind the scenes content that they've showed for the film, doing a lot of their real stunts. I think it's promising. I'm hoping for the best. I like the cast a lot, so we're hoping. And then I think in a couple weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks, The Weeknd, his film Hurry Up Tomorrow, kind of companion to the CD and the album that he dropped this year, will be coming out with Jenna Ortega and Barry Keoghan. Very interested in that. And then because I watched Mission Impossible last night in preparation, we got less than a month left until Dead Reckoning Part 2. It's going to be almost 3 hours, they confirmed. So that is more than anything that I could have asked for. I could ask the Oscars to move up the year that they're doing the stunt category, because Tom Cruise deserves a stunt Oscar nomination and award for the Mission Impossible movies. So I'm really hoping they do something to kind of rectify that, give them some sort of kudos. There got to be a lot of honorary Oscars that go out, because, Buster Keaton, there's just so many across the history of film who deserve recognition for their work in stunts. So it's really cool to see that that's kind of coming to fruition, as well as casting directors and ensembles and things like that. There's so much that goes in to making an incredible movie that most people never get to see. So I'm really excited that they're going to start honoring those. Thank you again, as always, for listening. You can tune in to NT Movie Reviews, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, nicktiffany.com, or you can find us on YouTube. Thanks again, you guys, and we'll see you next week.